being here. We'll be going over the agenda. And so what we got in store for y'all today is welcome and introductions. We'll be going over the objectives and agreements, and then we'll dive more into the material of Grants 101 and what that looks like. We'll be going over a step-by-step review of a grant and how that process looks like and the discovery and filling it out and whatnot. And then we'll take some time to write a sample budget, and we'll have Q&As at the end and some next steps for folks to know what's coming up next. And so I want to introduce some folks on our team. First, Shelly Jackson, she, her, hers, the executive director of Instituto. We have Victoria, she, her, hers, Instituto's data and research manager and the Building for the Future project lead. And our facilitator, Dulce Juárez, she, her, hers, she, her, ella, community fundraiser and consultant, and also 2019 Monzón Fellow. We got Desiree in the back, they, them, theirs, she, her, hers, the data and research coordinator, and yours truly, Mo, he, him, and Instituto's development coordinator. So for folks in the chat, if this is your first time attending an Instituto training, put a 1. If this is not your first time attending an Instituto training, put a 2. Want to kind of get an idea of how many new faces we got. And with that, I see a lot of new faces. So we want to tell you a little bit about Instituto. Our mission is to build sustained political power with low-income communities and communities of color in Arizona. And we do this by providing incubation acceleration to organizations and capacity building support for individuals and other orgs, right? And this kind of just, those are fancy words. But incubation is essentially harboring new ideas or dreaming up new ideas or organizations that solve other unique issues in the infrastructure in our communities here in Arizona. And acceleration stems from the idea that we know that there is inherent leadership and leaders in communities, and we want to accelerate their skill sets to be able to meet the moment, to be able to solve their problems in the community, right? And we do this by coaching and training and providing fellowship for all folks in the community, individuals or organizations. And so to jump a little bit into the overarching theme of what this where this training comes from, right? The Building for the Future project, a little bit of about like why it's important, why this project is needed for the moment. Building for the Future makes the case or grows the awareness of the local civic engagement sector and their strengths, the vulnerabilities and opportunities with respect to the local philanthropic community, funding and sharing resources. The project makes the case, a strong case for getting local philanthropic groups involved and talking about why it's important to invest in and making the communities community organizations more diverse and long lasting. And it also provides and creates an opportunity for us at Instituto and partner organizations to practice, ideate, test, and dream up new pathways to sustain funding and to sustain revenue for the future of the organization. We know that 2024 is a very pivotal moment for Arizona, where we have the presidential election, a lot of things going on next year, and we want to be able to meet the moment, to be able to sustain our organizations post 2024, and make sure that we have those organizations present to continue upholding their missions and to continue serving their communities. And so with that synopsis, I want to hand it over to Dulce, who is going to go over our community agreements and dive a little bit more into this training.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dulce Juárez. I'm going to be your trainer today. Thank you, Mo, for that amazing opening. And I think, Victoria, were you going to help us out with this section?
Yes.
Okay. I'll pass it on to Victoria before I get started. Go ahead, Victoria.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. So part of this training is a series of trainings that we've been hosting. So we have community agreements. I wanted to check in with you all as we're building this online community today around what agreements we want to have. And here's some offerings, and also wanted to ask you all if there's any other agreements that y'all want to kind of bring into the space. So the first one is step up and step back. So it's around participating equitably, which means like if you're someone who usually likes to, speak and share a whole lot, there's a lot that you always want to share, you have a lot of energy around sharing, maybe it's you're going to step back a little bit, and maybe someone who maybe doesn't share as much, maybe you're feeling like excited or have a lot of questions, or just want to share, to step up on that. So just thinking about equitable participation. Also assume good intentions, right? This project is really new and there's so many lived experiences. There's around 50 plus people on this call. So assuming good intentions will be important as an agreement today. Also to honor everyone's diverse experiences. As a community training, we know that people are coming from all sorts of different walks of life who have different experiences around this topic. And then also what is said here stays here and the learnings leave. So we know that some people share a lot on the chat or different things. And also because it is being recorded, right? Since we want to make this accessible to, use your own judgment of how things land, right? As what you're sharing in this community. Also, earn money. What does that mean, Dulce? I don't remember that one.
I think it was more of an affirmation that an agreement was like, okay, we're here to earn money and fund our organization. So it was more an affirmation.
Yeah, so part of an agreement is to have this abundance mindset, right? Around like affirmations that are like positive and kind of channeling that abundance mindset. That has been a reoccurring theme of these trainings. Also to be present, take calls, elsewhere, be muted, or be mindful of how you're showing up, like on camera or off camera. And also wanted to open the floor to ask if there's any other community agreements that you all would like to include here. Love that one from Veronica. Are there any other community agreements that have worked in spaces that you all have created or would like to see here? Okay. Impact versus intention. Jasmine, would you like to share more about that?
Sure. As a person who relates to other people, sometimes I do make conversational and like interpersonal missteps. And one that is really helpful for me to talk about is like my pronouns. Like I recognize we learn information before we meet each other. And sometimes that information kind of is that lens of how we're looking at things and we act out on that. So like we're socialized to see me as she, her. I'm socialized to see me as she, her. But there's an impact of acting off of that assumption. And there's an impact of acting off of just about anything we do. So even if it's in direct contradiction with how I usually carry myself or what I really believe, I can own the impact of what I'm doing despite whatever my intention is. And so bringing that into this space would help us give each other grace, but also work to be like, yeah, I did the thing and we can work through it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Community agreements are new to me. This all sounds wonderful. Great. Well, thank you so much. If there's anything else, please drop it in the chat. We'll make sure to put it on the slide deck. Y'all will get this slide deck as well as you're learning about community agreements, as some of you have shared. It's something that we want to ground us for this conversation. So with that, I think I pass it on to Dulce.
Thank you, Victoria. That was awesome. Now I'd like to review the learning objectives and what we hope that you will learn today. So the number one thing that we hope to cover today is learn and review the essentials of grant writing, which I'm about to show you today. We're going to go through a step-by-step walkthrough of a grant application. We're actually going to research for one, look one up, and actually go through a process of what it looks like to apply to an application, a grant application. Then I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to write a simple budget that you can also use. And finally, we're going to have an opportunity to have questions and answers towards the end of the call. I'm trying to make sure that, I'm sharing a lot of content today. So I'm trying to make sure that I get and cover everything that we created in this presentation. So I really want to invite you all to please ask your questions in the chat and/or keep your questions for the end. So if you could want to write them down, that would be great. Oh, I see Sofia Gonzalez. Voices comfort around let's see here. any whiteness that may show up today. You don't have to have a clear articulation before you speak up. Imagine and know that Instituto incorporates this in their practices regularly. Thank you, Sophia. Yes. Yes, so voice any discomfort, and feel free to reach out to any of the Instituto team members if anything like that shows up. Feel free to share it with us. And also wanted to name that everything, the approach of Instituto is with a Black feminist lens. We are lifting Black folks in this conversation. We are centering Black women in this work, knowing that, you know, Black girl magic and Black people power, and that we are showing up in a way that centers reparations for all communities of color. And I'm coming into this work centering reparations as well. But also that we are looking, and thank you, Sophia, for reminding me that Instituto does incorporate this into practices, that when Black people are free, everyone's gonna be free. So just wanted to name that, and that's how Instituto rolls. We name patriarchy, we name whiteness, we name capitalism, and we know that you know, these structures that we and systems that we live under aren't perfect. And so we know and come into this work knowing that, and also trying to do our best within the circumstances that we live under currently. So, okay, with that said, yes, thank you, Victoria. Wanna again remind you to please put your questions in the chat, and also write down your questions for towards the end. We're gonna have about 30 minutes. I also see my homie, my right-hand person, Jose, in the audience, in the chat, or actually in the participant section. Thank you, Jose, for showing up. He's gonna also, he's an expert in operations and finance. So I invited him to also help me answer some of your questions that you might have about those things. So thank you, Jose, for being here. Also, I'm going to be focusing mostly on foundations and grants around foundations. If you have questions around government and federal grants, Victoria Villalba with the Instituto team is happy to have a coaching call with you or have a one-on-one conversation with you about more federal related grants, because they kind of entail a little bit more metrics, a lot more numbers, and a lot more reporting, which we won't be covering here today. With that said, let's get started. Okay, things to know about things to know before applying for a grant. So these are important things. Can you click the next? Thank you. All right, some essentials that I think are so important from having past experience, and this is where you know, everything that I'm sharing with you today is all information that I wish I would have had when I started fundraising, and when I started when I had big goals to fundraise millions of dollars for a nonprofit. And I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? And this is some of the knowledge that I want to share and pass on to you all. So number one is, it is so important to organize yourself and have a centralized area for all your information. You want to make sure the information is categorized with nice folders, with nice labels, and this is the area where you're going to save all your materials and where you can find them easily. So this can be on Google Drive, this can be on Every Action, this can be and live in a database like Salesforce, or any sort of database that you use depending on your nonprofit or depending on your organization. You want to make sure that you have a centralized area where you can find this information. Second, again, I cannot stress this again, have all your materials ready in designated folders for everything that the grants will be asking you for. Number three, we're going to be teaching you how to find grants, and also you might be invited to apply for grants. A lot of people in nonprofits that are well known get invited to apply for a grant. So this will be the funder sending you an email and a request for a meeting, or just sending you an application, which is not available to the public. Number four, you found a grant, and now you need to research it. And the grant foundation, you want to make sure that it's a legit foundation. Next, you want to read the grant, and you want to make sure that you qualify for it. If you don't qualify for the grant, you need to move forward, and you need to say thank you next. But if you do qualify, then you want to make sure to apply. Next is make sure to look at the deadline and the internal and hard deadline and note that in your calendar, because that's going to be essential to making sure that you actually meet the deadline and get the application in right on time or in advance. And finally, it's so important to track your grant process in a grant tracker and add that to your calendar, all the essential dates. So I would say these are some of the essentials to grant writing. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to be sharing some links, and when this presentation ends and we send up a follow-up email, we're going to send you links that basically show you how to store your information and keep it organized. For now, the first folder that you need to have ready before you apply is your number one folder needs to have your organization's mission, vision statements, all your social media handles, and things about all the one-on-one on your organization, like info. Yes, thank you. Okay. All the infographics, info sheets, like a one-on-one page, a one-pager, all those types of things should be stored here. Second, it's important to have information on who your board is and a list of your staff. Sometimes they will ask you for a bio on your staff, who are members of your staff, what their bio is, and also they might want a photo. You might want to include that. It's optional. Usually they also ask for demographic information about your staff and your board, like what is the demographic makeup of your staff and board? Are they LGBTQ? Are they people of color? Are they what age range, what education? They could ask a series of questions because they want to get to know who your board is and what the makeup of your staff is as well. They want to know sort of what area and demographic you're in regards to location. Are you in the Southwest? Are you in Arizona? Are you in one of the swing states, what they like to call, especially if you're in politics and running campaigns? They want to know if you're, which we are, tend to be a swing state. So next is annual work plan. In this folder, you need to have your plan and your project. What is it that your organization is working on? So you want to have a project description that tells a heartfelt story about your organization and what you plan to do for the rest of the year. This is important to have ready because that way you can sometimes copy and paste some of the information from your work plan and into that grant application. Next is an organizational budget and a project budget, which actually should live in its own folder, and I'll be showing you more about the budget later on. Oh, and sometimes they ask you for a list of expenses that your organization has incurred till the day of you submitting the grant. Next is a list of funders. Sometimes funders want to see who are your top donors or your top funders. It doesn't mean that you have to go into detail about who those people are. You could just put the name and the cumulative amount that they've given. So let's say your top 5 foundations that have funded your organizations in the past, and then with a number of, like, let's say cumulative, they've given you 50,000. You want to put that, you want to list that wherever they ask you that question. Next is an IRS form with proof that your organization is in good standing. A 990 form, an audit form, or a letter about you not having an audit. If you're fiscally sponsored by another organization, that you need to have an agreement letter that tells the funder that you are fiscally sponsored by another nonprofit and that your program lives under their nonprofit, and that therefore you will use all of their documents. The nonprofit that is sponsoring you, that is fiscally sponsoring you, you will use their documents in order to process your grant for your program. Next is you want to have a folder that everyone can access with shared resources about your organization. It's important to also have a library that's public, with public documents of like news coverage on your organization, news articles, things that basically hype your organization up. Next is also a sheet of bank transfers information or where to mail a check to. Many times foundations want to know this ahead of time so that Once you get invited, for example, to apply, they will already have all your information ready and ready to transfer money over into your organization's account or to mail you a check. Everybody's different when it comes to how they submit, how they make payments, or how they basically award the grant. And finally, sometimes they ask for a cover letter about your organization. They want to know more about you, and that can be very basic, with your mission, vision, what you hope to accomplish, and the need that you have. Okay, that's more of a checklist, just so you all know. Okay, budget folder number 2. This is all about budgets. So some of the expenses that you all will have that you will need to add on your budget includes consultants, travel, printing, office supplies, postage, events, meetings, media buys, IT services, legal fees, direct program costs, personnel costs, and a fringe. If you give benefits to your employees, you should adjust it to be about 30% for personal costs should go towards benefits for your employees. And that's if you have the resources. Not everybody has the resources. Not everybody gives benefits to their employees because they are limited on funds, but some organizations do have the funds and can offer benefits to their staff, and that should be a 30% allocation of those funds should be for benefits. And then we'll be going over the budget a little bit later. So just wanted to name that your budget folder needs to have those things. Okay, or your budget needs to include those things. Let me take a breather. Make sure you have some water and a snack by your side. Let me take a little drink. I'm going to be sharing. I'm sharing a lot of information, and I promise there's some breaks to come. All right, grant folder number 3. The grant tracker. So the grant tracker is a very important tool that you will be using. And this folder is where you will be saving all information on all things grants. You want to stay organized and you want to know which grants you submitted when, so you can keep track of the process of every grant. So you want to have a spreadsheet where you enter all the data and where everything's saved. Okay, and the tracker can include these different types of tabs. You want to have a tab that includes potential grants that you might want to apply for. These are grants that you see online that you're like, okay, I'm going to just make a note, add it to my tracker, visit it later, and it's a potential grant for the future. You also want to have another tab with proposals. These are actual applications that you are going to be working on and that you plan to submit in the near future. The next tab is a tab about reporting. If you get a grant, you want to make sure that you track when the report will be due. Sometimes the report will be due in about a year from when you receive it. So if you get a grant in October 1st of this year, you might have to file a report October next year of 2024. So you want to make sure you keep the deadline, you track the deadline on the grant tracker, and that you revisit your grant tracker for reporting so that you don't miss deadlines, because that is part of the requirement at times by the funder, is that you submit a grant to them, a report about what you did with the grant. So it all depends on the reporting requirements. Sometimes grant funders give you a grant that's a multi-year fund grant. And that means that you don't have to submit a report. They give you funding for 2 years, and then they want to report 2 years down the line. Sometimes foundations are checking in with you, or the program officers are checking in with you within that 2-year period to get updates from you before the report is actually due. And finally, you want to have a tab where you track things that you did not apply for. And this is important because you can document grants that are potential grants that maybe you can apply the following year if you missed the deadline. And there's other reasons why you might have not applied to the grant. Maybe it was a small grant and you had a bigger grant that you were applying for. So maybe you didn't want to spend too much time on the smaller grant, but it can be there for the future. So you still want to keep track of the grants that you don't apply for. Those are also grants that you could send to other partners or other people in your community that you know, like, oh, you know what, I didn't apply for this grant, but maybe so-and-so in another organization might want to apply. And I'll show you an example in a bit about what that looks like, what a grant tracker looks like. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. And actually, yeah, let's take a 5-minute break right now because it's a lot of information. I have a bell that I'm going to ring 5 minutes from now. So let's take a quick 5-minute break, take a bio break, get some snacks, and we'll be back in 5 minutes to continue the workshop. Thank you all. Desiree, can we play some music?
You show me things in a different light, things that won't go right. You and me making chemical equations, deadly combinations, dangerous situations, running out in the magic of the night. I'm crystallized, 'cause you're my kaleidoscope love, kaleidoscope love. I'm crystallized, 'cause you're my kaleidoscope love, kaleidoscope love. I'm crystallized, 'cause you're my kaleidoscope love, kaleidoscope love. I'm crystallized, 'cause you're my kaleidoscope love, kaleidoscope love. kaleidoscope love. I'm crystallized, cause you're my kaleidoscope love. Kaleidoscope love. You show me things in a different light, things that won't go right. You and me making chemical equations, deadly combinations, dangerous situations, running out in the magic of the night, running out in the night, oh, 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 in the night, running out in the night. Running out in the night, running out in the night, oh, 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 in the night, running out in the
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I'm gonna ring this bell. Calling everybody in, calling everybody back. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Desiree. If you could please, so Desiree right now, welcome back, everybody. Before we move on, actually, I want to give a shout out to Nick Buxton, who shared a tip about Smartsheet. He basically says you can use this to track information, but you could also add trackers, add details, and announcements and things like that. For now, though, because I'm kind of going into the basics, and this is for folks that are very beginning stages, Google Sheets is totally okay. Like, you can collect information on here. So could you click on the potential tab, Desiree, please, on the bottom? Okay, so this is what the grant tracker actually looks like when you use it. This is a grant tracker I've used in the past for my work and for collecting information on grants. So what's essential to collect information on for potential grants are like who the funder is. Do you have a contact there? Do you have a contact email for anyone at the foundation? Sometimes the foundation has info sessions. You want to make sure to go to those, and whoever's listed at on that foundation information session, there's a contact email. Go ahead and add it on there so that way you could always continue to follow back up with those folks. You want to write entity. Entity means is it like, what's the tax code? Are they C3? Are they C4? What kind of foundation are they? Or what grant are they willing to give? Rachel, I just wanted to remind folks, if you could please put your questions in the chat, we'll keep an eye out there. And also we'll have time to discuss more towards the end of the conversation. Okay, the program is like, what program are they funding? Oh, okay. Hi, Rachel's dog. Purpose. So what is the purpose of the funding that they're giving you? What is basically, are they funding civic engagement? Are they funding sort of graduations for college students? Whatever the purpose is. What are the requirements too that they're requiring of you? Deliverables. So what is a deliverable that they might have or that you're saying that you're going to deliver to them? For example, we hope to graduate 500 high school students and send them to college in a college readiness program. That's one deliverable. A hard deadline. So the hard deadline is you want to know when the potential, so you're just looking at potential grants. You want to make sure that you track when is the actual deadline that you have to submit it by. The amount that they're giving, you want to add notes on there. You also want to add a link to maybe a coworker or someone that works there at the foundation and the website, the link to the foundation website. Can you go to proposals? The proposals have more information. Today, we're actually going to look at an actual proposal, and I have one here. Let me drink some water. This is what it would look like to actually fill it out. So take a look really quick. Thank you, Desiree. So it is important to also note that you have to keep tracking the money that's coming in and the grant that's coming in. And that's why there's a thing here, the first column here, when you're applying for an actual grant, is you want to make sure that you're tracking if you're adding it and tracking it in your actual finances on the other side, basically the operations side of it, is that you're tracking what money you hope to bring in, because it's tied to finances as well. So that's what that column is for. The funder is the name of the foundation. The entities, that the C3 means that they are a C3 nonpartisan organization, or that they're going to give you money for your C3 program. The program is general operating support. That's what GOS stands for. Usually that's the best types of grants that you can get, because that money is not allocated or restricted to anything. It's basically money that you can use for all kinds of things, that basically the general, thank you, Desiree, that's the general funds that you can use for all kinds of things in your organization. The purpose is, again, general operation funds. The requirements are basic. They're just asking you to submit a report. For example, deliverables is they want your budget and they want a report. That's the best type of deliverable, is that they don't ask you for much. An internal deadline, let's say that it's due September 5th internally, and you want to have your legal team or your board or your team. Sometimes some of us, some of our organizations might not have a legal, like a lawyer that reviews your grants. Some others do. Sometimes people run their grants through their board members. There's different ways in which your organization might have sort of a review process. If it's you and a small team, then you might want to have someone else that's like really good at editing, or someone else on your team review it before you submit it. The next tab is actually submitting when you submitted the grant. I would recommend that you try to work to meet the deadline in advance, so that you can move forward and start applying for other grants. I would, the worst case scenario is that you're always kind of scrambling, procrastinating, and waiting till the last minute to submit it, which I am guilty for doing a lot in the past. And so that is why I'm recommending that you try to always submit your grant days before the actual deadline. So the hard deadline, let's say it's October 1st, try to have it at least minimum 2 to 3 days before, okay? The status, you want to say that you submitted it. Here you could also say it's in progress, or here you could say something like asking for an extension. So there's different things you can add here on status. Date notified. So date notified is when they let you know, okay, October 21st is when they're going to let us know if we got the grant or not. Date of funds received. You want to track when you actually receive the funds. So let's say October 31st. So it takes some time to get the funds. It doesn't happen from one day to the next. The amount is the amount that the grant is for. So let's say it's a $50,000 grant. Notes on the funder. Notes here could be like, the funder said that the funds would come from the Pisces Fund Collective. So sometimes money will come into your account and you're like, who the heck is, this is great, we got money, but who is it from? Sometimes foundations have other ways and portals and other names and other accounts that they basically donate the money to you, or that keep the money to you. Yes, you can also, yes, I see a question on here. Do you keep track of the amount requested versus awarded? Yeah, that's a piece more on the financial side, which we'll talk about it towards the end of the conversation. And Jose, if you could take a note of that. Jose is an expert on finance and operations. So there is a tracking that you need to be doing on the finance side of like all the money you asked for versus the money you actually got. Next is the link number 1, like videos or things, who are the directors, information on the people that you are basically getting an award or a grant from. You want to put the website here. You want to put a portal on there. Portals are very important, y'all. Can you go to the next? Can you move towards the, like, so we could see what's after portal? I think that's the login information. Okay. These 2 tabs on S&T, those tabs on portal and login information, y'all, it's so important that you write down all of the information and that you share with other people in case other people need to submit things for you, or in case you are submitting so many at times, that it's important to write down the login information so you can go back and access the grant portal and upload information or download information. Thank you, Jose. Yes, it's always good to double check if you're using the correct word and phrases. If you're, yes, thank you, Jose. Entity-wise, especially in reporting. Thank you, Desiree, for moving into reporting. You always want to make sure that you're reporting and always writing your content towards the correct entity. So if you're C3 and the grant is C3, or if you're you also have a C4 nonprofit, 501c4, which is more for political use, you want to make sure that all the language is consistent with that tax code. And if that's what the grant is, if they're giving you, if you're C4 and you're writing a grant for a C3, you want to make sure that you shift the language so that it is basically going with the requirements of the grant. You never want to write basically the opposite. It's so important to keep track of the language, and we can talk more about that towards the end. But reporting here is very similar. Well, I think the most important thing here is just that you remember what the requirements were and that you add the deliverables of what you said you were going to do in one of those grants. And you want to, of course, make sure that you meet the hard deadline. So it is important for H, if you go to column H, the internal deadline is key here. If you know that you have a grant report that's due in October, try to start it in September as much as you can. That way you can meet the hard deadline and you don't have to wait to submit it. You can submit it early if you want. And again, it's the same thing. Like, you want to make sure that you put information on when you submitted it, the date that it was confirmed that they received it, the amount, again, just for purposes, for your own purposes, notes on like the reporting process, and again, the portal info. And next is did not apply. So you missed reasons for why you didn't apply. I think it's good reference, especially if you're training the rest of your team or you're working as a collective to do these grants. It's important to tell people why you didn't apply for it, because then someone else can pick up and start off where you left off and read why you didn't apply for the grant, and maybe next year someone else will apply for it. So it's always a good resource to have. And again, I really encourage folks to share information with other organizations and other partners, because maybe if you didn't apply for it, this is a good way to keep good relationships with other people in your community, and just let them know, like, hey, I didn't apply for this grant, but I think it'd be perfect for you. I think your organization might qualify. So here goes, and just drop them the link and send them an email. So that's the grant tracker. Can we go back to the presentation? Thank you, Desiree. All right, y'all, I'm sharing so much information. And now, okay, now that you have your drive, now that you have all your checklist done, your budget ready, all of the information is ready, and you're ready to apply for a grant. So go ahead to the next slide. Okay, the first thing is, people are like, well, where do I find a grant? And I can just tell you right now that it's, you know, not a big deal. You can look up foundations on the internet that fund your issue. You can talk to funders that you know, or that all your maybe other organizations know and can introduce you to them. You can attend conferences where there's a lot of gatherings of funders there. You can ask your staff, your board, or other allies to share grant information with you. You can also reach out to program officers that you have a good relationship with, and ask them if they can make introductions to other funders. Look for similar programs as you or as your organization across the country, and look up who is funding them. You can usually research them on their website, and sometimes some organizations have a list of who their funders are. If you look around the city or town, you can see that there are look for who sponsored by announcements or donated by, or funded by announcements, like at museums, colleges, universities, libraries. There's a lot of people that want to be seen. If you go to the Desert Botanical Garden, they have names of like who funded the bench and who funded this garden and who funded different parts of the garden. At the zoo, like there's all kinds of people that are funders, that are donors, and that are basically getting credit and getting their announcements everywhere. So those are also another way that you can find folks that are giving grants or foundations. The next one, Oprah's. Yeah, thank you, Kaz. The next one is some resources for nonprofits is Just Fund, Civic Participation, Youth Engagement Fund. They all have a funding opportunities tab, or they have tabs where you can basically apply for grants. So I think, Desiree, this is where I'm gonna take over. Is that correct? Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. I wanna show you an example of what it is to like actually look for one. Okay, so I just mentioned to you, let's pretend right now that somebody gave you a tip and said, oh my gosh, I know of this awesome program. The name is, let me open this up. Their name is Youth Engagement Fund. They fund all things for youth. And I heard that they have grants. They not only give grants, but they also have resources. So then we're looking on here, and oh, here is that link, Get That Money Funding Opportunities. So they have a list of applications for people. They have a list of foundations, who's giving money, okay? So you'll look through it, you'll read through it, and you'll see, oh, which one do I qualify for? Which one looks good? Which one looks like I want to apply for? And let's say this one looks good. Move this over here. The Wild Geese Foundation, you click on it. Okay, it looks good. Let's go to the application. Okay, and let's read the application. So you want to read it. It looks like a very simple application. Okay, it says new grantees will not be considered for the current grant cycle, October 1st to 23. The foundation does not fund organizations with budgets of that exceed 5 million. So if you're over 5 million, you don't qualify. If you're under, that means you qualify. Applicants are encouraged to read all the questions before and begin the application process. Before the application process, it will make filling your application easier. Okay, so that is actually a really good tip that they're giving to you is you want to start a Google Sheet before you start the application process so that you have the Google Doc ready with all your information and data entered. The foundation does not fund organizations outside of the US. Grantees must be a 501c3 or part of a 501c3 fiscal sponsored arrangement, which is what we talked about earlier. That even if you're a program, but you're fiscally sponsored, they'd be willing to donate to you or give you a grant. Then they give you the link of where you're actually going to submit the grant to. Okay, this looks like I qualify. This looks like Instituto qualifies. And this looks like most of us here qualify, unless you're outside of the United States, then you probably wouldn't qualify. And if you have a foundation or if you have a program that's over 5 million, you're not going to qualify. Okay, so okay, so I'm excited. I'm going to apply for this. What do you all think? Should I apply? Is there another step? Anybody? Anybody in the chat? What do you think is next? You could also come off mute. What needs to happen next before I apply? Peep the deadline. Oh, okay. Yeah, let's look at the deadline. That's a good one. The deadline for this application is October 1st. Okay. Get approval from the border legal team. Interesting.
Where are
Input.
the questions? Where are the questions that is asking you to review?
Okay. Thank you, Ruby. Michael Beltran says input info into the tracker. Okay, Ruby. Okay, application questions. They're saying review the application questions and they're right here. What's the organization contact information, grant request, title, grant request amount? Yes, okay. Who are these people? Before, those are all really great answers. Yes, get approval, check your tracker, add the tracker, check the application date when it's due. But before we get there is we want to make sure that we know who these people are, because never really heard about these people. Who are they? You know, they have a little application. It's the directors, I don't know anyone. I've never heard of them. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do one thing that's so important. And this is, you need to check if they're legit, if they're an actual organization. So I want to invite you all to open an account. You don't have to do it right now. Do it when you can. But I want to invite you all to open a free account with GuideStar. And GuideStar, I'm not promoting them. They're not paying me to do this. I'm just sharing a tool that I've used in the past to check to see if they are a real organization. So here you would put Wild Geese. You would go to it, Wild Geese Foundation. You would add it in the search, and here they are. They actually are a real foundation. And what GuideStar does is that they basically give you information about all foundations, and they give you information about nonprofits. And this is where you can find if they're an established and legit foundation. So it's important for them to have an EIN, which is a part of the IRS. This makes sure that they're in good standing, that they met all the IRS filing requirements, that they are under a foundation, their address, and when they were established. Let me check the chat because I can't see. Okay, who do they fund? Yeah, we want to see who they fund. Let me see here. It says new grantees will not be considered this upcoming grant. Have you received grants from them before? Oh, good question, Devon. I'm just assuming that they're like, it's open, but yes, that's a good note. Right now it says that they are not considering new people unless you've received an invitation from them in the past. So who do they fund? Yeah, we want to know who do they fund. And what are some of the red flags to avoid grant website scams? Yeah, so yes, these are, thank you, Timba, welcome. GuideStar is going to do that. It's going to help you make sure that, you know, you kind of screen people before you take money from them, which is kind of important. So one thing to find out is go to their most recent 990, which is how they report where their money went, who they paid. And this is all private information. I mean, I think it's public information. It's obviously here. So this is a private foundation, but it says that it is a trust treated as a private foundation. By law, y'all, most foundations by law only have to give 5%. So they're sitting on $10 million. They by law have to only give 5% of what they have, just to stay in good standing and keep their foundation open. So when I learned this, y'all, I was like, what if somebody's sitting on millions of dollars and they only have to give 5%? I'm going to ask for almost everything. You know, I'm going to ask for as much as I can. They also have requirements, though. They have their, like, how much they're giving in each year and things like that. So here you can find out how much they spend, how much they brought in, how much, I'm not a tax expert, so I'm not going to read the sheet to you right now, but I can tell you that from this sheet, we will find out who they gave money to and how much they gave to other nonprofits. So let's go here. Okay, so here on page of grants, contributions paid during the year and approved for future payment. So they gave money to general purpose, general operation grants. You see that? That's what I was talking to you about, GOS, general operation grants. They gave someone agrarian land trust $350,000. And most of their other grants were $15,000, $25,000, $10,000, $5,000, $20,000. So they're funding a variety of people. They're funding many different types. Equality North Carolina Foundation, Esperanza Academy, Families for Justice as Healing. So they funded a total of $950,000. So close to $1 million. And they also paid some of their staff, some of the people that are helping to distribute the money. So you could also see here who are some of the people that work there. You can see who they paid. You can see who are some of the board members on here. And that gives you information. So when you see this, that is basically showing you that they are in good standing, that they do have money, that they do have funds, and they're showing us who they gave money to. Okay, so let me stop sharing that. I think I have something. Should board members be paid? Okay, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think some of these foundations get the funders, or I mean the board members get paid, but I'm not an expert on boards that are running foundations, so I can't really answer that question. Okay, but now it looks like they're legit. I already reviewed them. I feel comfortable applying for this. So what's next is I'm gonna go to my folder where I'm tracking everything, okay? So this folder has all my information that I was mentioning to you, that checklist that has my tax information, my mission, my vision. I already have, I added it to my grant tracker. I have my budget ready. And now I'm actually gonna start the process of applying for this. So how do you do it is you create a Google Sheet. You wanna name it, you wanna actually get the questions from here, from the application. This is what you want to do is you want to highlight and copy and paste it into your grant application. Okay. Oops, I don't know why it's doing that. Do normal text. All right. You want to add. Okay. What is it called? Wild geese. Wild geese. Foundation. C3 grant. C3 grant proposal. C3 proposal. And then you want to start answering the questions. You're going to add information about your organization, let's say Instituto, all the contact information. You want to add the grant request title. So like you sometimes want to like a catchy, you know, BFTF, or building for the future, let's say. Building for the future, building for the future community fundraising, 2023, 2024. Okay, so you could just come up with something random. Some people really like to spend time getting a creative title for their grant, whatever, you know, floats your boat. If you have time for that creativity, go ahead. Sometimes it could be very basic. How much do we want to request? I don't think they even said how much. Let's just say we want to request. Looks like they gave someone 350,000. Why not? Let's go for it. They gave someone else that much. Why not? I'm gonna dream big. Okay, when does the grant start date and the grant end date? So it looks like they're gonna start October 1st. So I'm gonna say that November 1st, my grant would be, let's say I get the money, I would start implementing it, and I would end November 1st of 2024. That's how long I would say I would want that grant for. Let's see, I see some comments in the chat. Okay. Oh, sorry, y'all, I'm missing some. Okay, thank you, Liz, for answering that question. I think we're over time. Okay, y'all, let me see here. Are we taking a break now, y'all? Sorry, can somebody tell me if it's break?
Yes, we're going into a break.
All right, thank you so much. I'm gonna give us, I think, do you all want a 5-minute break or a 10-minute break? How are we doing on time? A ver. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see. So 5-minute break. Okay, awesome. The content is good. The content is hot. All right. We'll come back. We'll do a 5-minute break and we'll see you soon. Can you, a ver. Let's see, okay, emojis in the chat. Ring my bell, calling you all back. Thank you so much. All right, actually, can I share my screen again, Desiree? You know, we're gonna work on the budget really quick, but before we get there, I wanna finish up conversation about when you're, thank you. Okay, here's the grant. All right, I'm gonna be like a chef on a show. You know, they show you sort of like the outcome and what it looks like. So let's say you filled this all out, you filled out the questions, your team gave you feedback, your board or your legal team has already reviewed it. This is an example of what it might look like, okay? And I'm just sharing with you Instituto sort of an example of their, of a general proposal that they've submitted. So it would have the name of the proposal, the summary, a program description, what they're offering, what they're working on, information about their team, financial need that they have. So this is kind of what it would end up looking like. Here's another example. Okay. Their mission, their vision, core pillars about what they work on, the proposed funding that they're applying for, who's the staff that's working there, and sort of a proposed budget. So this is what essentially a grant application would look like when it's completed. So now that I've showed you that, we've already seen that they're legit, we looked at their application, we completed our own internal application here, and everybody's already approved it. We go to the actual link and then you want to submit it. After you submit it on their website, I wanted to show you something that's so important and that goes into your grant tracker. Let's assume this is another funder, Justice Outside. But I really liked what I really liked about them is that they have this list of their timeline for grants. Grants take time sometimes. They don't happen from one day to the next. You can apply in April and you'll hear back in August from them. So here's kind of a step-by-step of where their process is. So application submission in April, their staff reviews the process in April after like a few days or a few weeks. Then the board has an info session in June, which is something to note. I didn't know this when I first started applying for grants. But grants have and foundations have their own internal processes and deadlines, and sometimes their board makes all the decisions, so they have to wait for their board meeting to actually make a selection of who they're going to give the funding to. So the program officer, you might be really cool and homies with them. The program officer is the person that gives out the money. You might be cool with them, but at the end of the day, they might not have the full say. Some do, some don't. Sometimes the board gets really involved at a foundation and they decide who they're going to give the funding to. And that sometimes they usually have foundations have meetings with their boards sometime in the summer. Okay, so then here it is. Final board meeting, June 16th. Awards are announced to the grantees. So you will know if you got the grant in advance before they make the award. They're very organized here, and I love the layout. That might not always be the case. Sometimes you might not hear back, so you have to kind of drop a note or an email, or try to reach out to the grant officer, or try to reach out to the foundation. Updates to applicants that are not selected. So I do appreciate that they added that here. Some don't let folks know. You just don't hear back, so you might need to do follow-up. And then the funds are released. That means funds released means that they actually sent the payment and the grant over. Awards are announced publicly by August. So you might know a few weeks in advance if you got it, or a month in advance, and then they will announce it. So that's just an example of an application process when the whole process. But again, these are the deadlines for you to know, and this is what you want to add in your grant tracker. So you go to your second folder, you go to your grant tracker, and after you're done filling it out, let me see here. You'd want to go to your second tab. Let me go ahead and put this somewhere else. You'd want to go to proposals. And let's say that you did apply for the grant, then this is what it would look like. The funder, the entity, what you're applying for, the deadlines, and all of that. That's where you want to submit the hard deadline. When you submitted the internal, all of that stuff goes in here. Okay, that's kind of an example of what I was saying that relates back to the timeline of the grant. Sometimes you have to dig a little bit more with the grant, with the program officer and with the staff, or go to their info sessions if they have one. They don't always have info sessions, so you kind of have to do a little bit of those questions of like, oh, okay, so when is the final? They usually do let you know when they want that final application by. Okay, y'all, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. Let me see. Sorry. Hold on one second. Okay. Thank you, Desiree. Okay, so now let's talk budget. This is an example of a big functional budget, okay? This is I found online. I'm just giving you a budget example. Salaries usually take up a big chunk of your budget, your overall budget. This is a nonprofit that has a $2.5 million budget. Probably folks on here don't have that budget right now. Some of you do, some of you don't. Some of you are working and dreaming towards this, but know that it is possible. But a big chunk of it goes, again, to salaries to pay your employees. And as you can see here, you also have to spend a big amount of that money on employee benefits, payroll, taxes, professional contract services, materials, equipment, cost of goods sold. So they probably have a program where they sell things, advertisement and promotion, office expenses, IT, royalties, insurance, travel, and all kinds of things. So I don't think, do I have another slide on budgets here? I think I was going to share. Okay, no. Can we go back? Sorry. Could you share the budget link, Desiree, or I can share it too? Oh, thank you. Can you go to the tab gap? Okay. One thing that is so important to note is, can you click on gap, please? Okay. Funders might ask you, what's your gap when you talk to them? And gap basically is your total project budget for the year. So for example, what does it take to run your organization for 1 year? So let's say you calculate $100,000. $100,000 is what you need to run your organization, and you add up all of the income from all sources that you've gotten to that point. So let's say it's March and you've only brought in $20,000. After that, you want to subtract the 100,000 minus the 20,000 that you have in income. And that will give you a combined, you want to basically combine all the income though, like grants, donations, online donations, individuals, anything that you've received, sum up all of that combined income and subtract it from the $100,000 budget that you want to fundraise for. And what is left over is your actual gap. So 80,000 is what your gap is for the year. 80,000 is what you're still trying to fundraise. So one strategy, there's strategy that goes behind how to get to those $80,000. So you could get there very easily by applying for a grant of $100,000, and that'll give you a surplus. You could also apply for 2 grants of $40,000. So as long as you look for grants that are up at that level, you will be able to meet your goal by the end of the year and then some. You can always try to get some more money. Some notes about the gap is if you go to column D3, can you make that a little bigger? Okay. To get to this number, you want to work with your finance person. You want to project how much does it really take to actually run your organization. It's not very easy. You have to create a budget with a finance person, an accountant, or someone on your team, someone on your board. If we go to E3, it says there are options for you here. Okay, let's say 100,000 is your budget to. It's kind of like a middle of the road budget. There's also what we call the keep the lights on budget. The keep the lights on budget maybe is 80,000. Okay, 100,000 just gives you a little bit of cushion. But let's say a keep the lights on budget is like, oh my gosh, we just need to pay the bare minimum. You know, our employees are not getting benefits. We're just keeping the lights on and paying for the very basic program that we need to run. And that's a short term and a short time amount of budget where you need to have a quick turnaround too. A middle of the road budget is what I was saying here, like 100,000. You know that you really, to keep the lights on, it's 80,000, but you're gonna say 100,000 just so that you can be safe and have a little bit more cushion room for emergencies and things like that. All right, the next thing here is a Cadillac budget. So Cadillac budget is like, you're gonna dream big, you're gonna ask for more, you're gonna, you know, try to make the most that you can to bring in more resources for this year and next year, so that way you have money left over for the following year, and you can just start off your year running and just like have all the money that you can in advance of the upcoming year. So, all right, if you go to D4, okay. So these ones are from, like I was saying, add up all your income, all the source from all the sources. That this is online, donation, grants, everybody that's ever given you $1, you want to add that to your combined income. Some funders will want to list. So it's important to track who is funding you, who is giving you donations. You don't need to give all the details. You just need to give the basic information. For example, the name of the donor or the funder that gave you money. For example, the Kellogg Foundation gave me 10,000. So you don't need to go into details. Some funders want to remain anonymous. And I think, can you scroll down a little bit to the next? Okay. What funders ask you is, what is your gap? And this is the number that you want to give them. So closing that up, I hope you all understood that part. Can you go on to the BFTF project, please? Thank you. Okay, this is a quick, very simple budget that you all will have access to, where you add the name of your organization, the project title. Remember, you can get fancy, you can get creative, or you could just say, you know, Instituto's fundraising program 2023. It doesn't have to be a long fancy name. And then expenses. So like I was showing you earlier, there's a list of expenses. You want to name what those expenses are. So for example, staff, you want to pay for staff benefits, you want to pay for the actual program, your education program. And then you want to list the expense. How much does it really cost to pay your employees? How much does it cost for printing? All of those things. Can you scroll down, please, Desiree? Okay, then you want to total the sum up of how much all your expenses are. And then on item 27, that's where you're going to put the income or other resource. You want to basically include cash and contributions. This is where you put all of your income or some of your income. That's where you want to list out, like, Kellogg Foundation gave me $10,000. Then you want to move down here, and actually this is for something else we're about to announce in a little bit. But this is where you would say how much you're requesting, and then the total cash that you have on hand, the total income, the total expenses, and if you have a surplus or a deficit. Basically, a surplus is like you have way more than you were expecting, or you have a deficit where you are in red numbers. Hopefully you are not in red numbers, but sometimes your organization might be needing the funds. Can you go to expenses? Thank you. These are a list of just basic expenses that you might have. Consultants, travel, printing, office supplies, IT, legal fees, direct program costs. Direct program costs, y'all, there might be a separate budget, and just depending on the funder, if it's not general operating support grant, they might just want to fund one of your programs or one of your projects. You will need to create a budget just for that project and not your overall expenses like rent and all of those things. Some funders don't want to fund your office supplies. Some funders really want to fund the core of your work, which is like helping and supporting inmates to adjust to the community after they get out of prison. And you might have that program, and they might want to just fund the program and not your operational costs. And that's totally okay. The funder gets to decide, right, what they're doing, but it's up to you to make sure that you create a separate budget for the specific program that you want to tell the funder about. Okay, that's all on budgets. Can we go back to the main slides? Let me check on here. Okay, awesome. All right, y'all, I think I'm actually right on time. So I want to go over some of the nuances. I want to talk to you all about some of the things that nobody really talks about when it comes to fundraising, but that they are part of what it takes to fundraise. So some of the nuances, and also I'm going to open it up for questions right now. Sorry, give me 1 second. Some other nuances are, for example, I have a bunch, but I need to think about them. Resources. Thank you, Desiree. Desiree is dropping a bunch of resources. Okay, so there are some funders that are in different levels of decolonizing their minds, okay? Not everybody's woke, not everybody's decolonized. So sometimes the first thing I want to say that's most important is, just because a funder asks you for something doesn't mean you have to say yes. If the funder says jump, you don't say how high. Like, we don't want to do that. We want to be very mindful and conscious of the power dynamics when it comes to money. They're also in a partnership with you. You have to see them in an equal level playing field and not cater to just everything that they say, or you also don't want to change your project just so you can get the money. I really would recommend that you want to include other people on your team in the process, so that the relationship of the foundation holder, the foundations isn't just in one person, so that one person is not the only holder of all relationships. It is helpful to have other people included in some of the meetings, so that even if they note take for you, even if they just support you, or if it's your executive director, if it's a board member helping you, it is important to try and have someone else join you, just because that way you have shared information, shared knowledge, you're training other people, because this work you need a lot of help. It's a lot of work. The next thing is, again, if a deliverable does not align, do not change the plan that you have just for the money. And it's okay to say no to the money if it doesn't align with your organization or if the dynamics are out of balance. So again, like I said, like if the funder's asking you for things or changing their mind or changing the plan, it might be best to maybe not work with them and just not take the money. If they're asking you to do things that are outside of the scope of the agreement, sometimes funders want you to attend a million meetings and you actually need to get to your work. And so it is okay to say no to funders sometimes. Foundations do talk to other program officers and other staff, and they know each other. So it is important for you to be consistent with what you're saying to other people in different applications, because they can check in with each other and say, oh, I saw that, you know, X, Y, and Z organization applied to this. Are they asking you for, how much did they ask you for? I saw that they're running this program. They're gonna talk to each other. So it is important. They all kind of share their priorities and what they're giving towards. So it is important that that you ask them. Oh, I think that we missed a few slides. Actually, sorry. Okay. Before I keep going, I actually want to pause right now. And Desiree, we missed slides 21 and 22. So because it applies to all of these. Can you go to slide 21, please? Okay. Let me stop right there on the nuances and questions and briefly go back to the compelling application, because like we mentioned, you're going to be talking about your organization, your team, your project goals, a problem you want to solve, and what your organization has to what the need is in your organization. It relates to what I was saying about sometimes if you don't align with what the funder wants, you need to just not do it. Okay. For example, you also need to name what your need is. For example, you need to be explicit. We are seeking $40,000 to cover a new staff position that will help us with communications. This will have an impact on the visibility of our organization and the reach that we have to impact many on our community, many people in our community. And you want to add statistics. You want to add the numbers, because the numbers basically tell a story to your funder about what is the demographic and the impact that you can really have in your community. You want to tell them how you're going to measure the impact. I know this is a really hard one for a lot of people, and it kind of sucks that we have to do this sometimes, but they do ask for measurement. They want to see some sort of number of the actual impact, like how many participants came to your event, how many, you know, how many people actually received backpacks and things like that. What are activities that you will host? What are your participation goals? Like how many participants you want to have in a whole year? Like maybe you want to impact the lives of 1,000 people in your community. You want to make sure you have some way to track that and then report it back. And you want to prove that you can be successful in your goal. And what is the evaluation process? You might need to report this back in your report if they request one. Desiree, can you click on the next one, please? Okay. Funders will evaluate you by this, okay? These are so important. They will review your mission and vision, because they want to know if it's in who you are in relation to in regards to their funding priorities. So they all have funding priorities. They already have a list of people they want to give to, or they already or they're scoping out like who they want to give to, but they have their funding priorities. For example, they want to fund education, they want to fund the environment, or maybe they want to fund outdoor programs. And what they want to know what you're going to do with the money that they give you. So this is very important that you give them a really good program description and objectives and how you're going to make an impact. They also want to know how you're going to spend their money. They're going to look at the budget and make sure that it overlaps with the narrative that you're telling them. And your budget also tells a story. So make sure that you're as descriptive as you can on your budget. And they're going to look at how does this fit into our larger vision and goals. So they're looking at it from their perspective. how do their values, your values as an organization is aligned with their funding and what they're doing and their organization, their foundation. So if their foundation that only focuses on animal rights and you are applying again for a grant and you're trying to ask them for $500 to graduate high school students, or you're asking them to help you fund to get 500 high school students to graduate, they might not fund you because they focus on animal rights. So you gotta, again, make sure that the funding priorities align. And how will you know that the money has made an impact? Most funders want to see outcomes and they want to see the report back because they too have to report it back to someone. Okay, I think those were some of the, thank you, Desiree. Let's go back to the Q&A. Thank you. Okay, it's okay for another thing, it's okay to ask them what their giving capacity is. Like, how much are you funding this year? And you can ask them questions. Some staff are very supportive, some are hands-off, and some have very strict boards that basically dictate who they're going to give to. And everybody has different portals, different budgets on how they want to do their own thing. It takes a lot of work and commitment, you all, to do this work. So make sure you're taking good care of yourself and that you're delegating the work so that it doesn't just fall on one person. So grant resources, there are a bunch of resources I'm going to be sharing with y'all. Community-centric fundraising is one of them. They are like the lead organization right now in the state, in the whole country actually, that's really talking to philanthropy, that's really talking to funders about changing the dynamic, about power dynamics when it comes to philanthropy, because the essence and the foundations of philanthropy are rooted in white supremacy. The way in which foundations were, established was on the backs of Black slaves and indigenous communities, that lands were stolen and everything. So all the wealth that it has been built by these foundations and old school legacy foundations in philanthropy, they have money that belongs back to the people. And so it's kind of this tense thing that we need to acknowledge, right? But that money belongs to the people, and so we need to, but also foundations have a structure they have to follow to adhere by the IRS codes and things like that. So community-centric fundraising, I strongly recommend that you check out their work. Also Lou V, I think I think I need to look up his name, but he has a lot of really good resources on fundraising AF. You can follow him online and he has a lot of resources as well. So, okay, that's all from me at this point. I have Jose here on the line too. Questions and answers from you all. Those are some of the nuances, but please, any questions that you might, oh, thank you, Nonprofit AF. Thank you, Liz. Please check out Nonprofit AF. They also talk a lot about the power dynamics and philanthropy and how it needs to be a more equal relationship rather than like, oh, you have the money, I have the money, you have to do what I say. And that's not at all the case. We have to approach this work and philanthropy as a partnership where they are supporting the amazing work that you're doing. Okay, y'all, those are all the nuances I have. We're going to move into questions and answers, opening it up for y'all. Let's see if we have any questions on the chat. Any questions? You can feel free to come off mute. Okay. Jose, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have two things that I picked up from the chat. When sometimes funders don't want to be disclosed. So it is very important to ask them if you have to do reporting for other institutions or stuff like that, right? Just make sure that they're able to be disclosed, or if not, make sure it's like anonymous. That's also very important. And then the other question that I had was, do you keep track of the amount requested versus the amount awarded? It is also very important to do that because you start to see trends from institutions, trends from the funders, right? To where maybe on years or election years, they donate more than other years, right? So it's also very important to do that. You'll see lots of trends. But yeah, those are the two questions that I picked up. And if you all have any other questions, please let me know. Also try to keep your budget very simple. Don't create too much work for yourselves. Because if you create a complex budget and saying like you're categorizing items very specifically, then when the reporting comes out, it could be very hard to report it back to the funder because they only have certain categories, right? So then you have to put everything into their categories. So the more simpler you can have your budget, the better it is. But those are my recommendations. And if you have any questions, please, put in the chat or just let me know.
Thank you, Jose. And Jose, can you put your email on the chat if people want to reach out to you for like expert information or expert questions? Jose is happy to take your questions down or support you with that. You of course want to also support and fund people. So if you can have capacity to pay someone for their expertise, please do. And Jose is available to answer some of your questions. He is one of the best people that I've worked with on operations and finance. So really appreciate you being here, Jose. That's really great advice on the finance side and keeping your budgets short and small. There you go. So y'all take a note of that email. Also, I will be sharing my information too if you have any questions for me. One last thing I want to say, y'all, it's so important that sometimes funders will be asking questions like, who do you work with? What partners are you working with? Who are you collaborating with? Sometimes they want to know extra information about the ecosystem or how things are going in the state. And, the best thing is for you to keep it high level. Don't get involved in any sort of comments around drama or anything about who's working with who. You want to just say, you know what? I want everybody funded. When other people get funded, you will get funding too. When other people get funding and you don't, you win too, because that's one more contact in our network of funders. So as long as money's coming into our state, as long as we get new funders in our state, that's what we want. When other people get funding, it's good for all of us. So please, we want to stay positive. We want to stay high level and always pivot back to how you're doing an amazing job and how your organization is creating change and who you're actually partnering up with. And I always love to lift up Black, Indigenous people of color. Whenever I'm talking to a funder, I always want to lift up other people and say, did you know that Black Lives Matter Phoenix Metro is also doing X, Y, and Z? We want to lift up Black communities as well in our work. Did you know that CARE is working on a database collection to track and have information on the Muslim community so that we can better service our Muslim community members? So always try to make a pitch for Black organizations who are always underfunded. So please make sure to make a pitch for Black organizations, Indigenous organizations, and ¿qué más? Okay, I think that's all from me. And keep one tip, newsletters. Keep your funders updated, add them onto your email list or in a very specific list of funders where you're keeping them updated on your amazing work. They love to get personal stories, personal notes about, today we took a mom to go and speak publicly in front of this big government agency, and she, impacted the policymakers, and now they're going to change the law, so they want to hear stories that are community frontline stories. Okay, that's all from me, y'all. I think if we don't have any questions, we can move towards the closing.
Wait, I have a question, Dulce.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to have the example of grant folder, all those drive? Are you guys sharing that with us, or I just wanted to know?
We'll send out a copy of the presentation along with the links, and I think you're gonna have access to the folders, And I don't know, are we gonna share the recording, y'all, or no? Do we have capacity to share that? Might be a big link.
Yeah, yeah, I will share now. So a lot of folks have been asking me directly or through email, but we're going to be sharing. So we have what's called a Praxis Library, which is our resource library, where all things are housed that we're sharing. So the recording will be there for this training, as well as the other resources, and we'll make sure to send the link to the portal. It lives on our website, but definitely with all the other resources that Dulce has shared, we'll make sure to include that as well, so y'all can have access, and that's will live in our website, so y'all have access to that for sure.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, now I'm gonna pass it on to our wonderful Mo to give an announcement.
Thank you, Dulce. Thank you so much for your amazing facilitation and all the wonderful information that you shared with us today. And thank you for everyone for coming out to our trainings and being so engaged with us during this moment and this learning. One thing about these trainings is that we put so much intention, time, and thought into them to make sure that you all are equipped with all the necessary resources and support to continue doing the work that you're doing. And all our trainings and coaching services are all free of charge here at Instituto. You're able to request trainings or even request coaching hours, all free of charge. And for us to continue this model of support and to lead by example of creating a sustainable revenue source, we're asking y'all to please donate, to please share whatever you can with us, for us to continue building that out, to continue building our own sustainable revenue source. So we'll make sure to follow up with a link, scan this QR code, donate to us, support us. You're also welcome to become a monthly reoccurring donor. So that's one thing, to lead by example. And now to go into the next steps, we have a feedback survey. Your feedback is very critical to our growth here at Instituto. We hold debrief sessions with our teams after these trainings where we go over all the feedback y'all provide, what went well, where are areas for improvement, what are suggestions for next time, etc. And we take the time to be able to digest that and to implicate it into our next training. And so take the time to fill it out, scan the QR code. It won't take any longer than 2-3 minutes, but the impact of that survey will be long lasting and it will benefit the whole entire community as a whole. So please take some time to do that. And as Victoria said earlier, our Praxis Library, you can gain access by scanning this QR code. This is our masterclass series, and it also holds a lot of our other trainings and recordings and whatnot. But the masterclass Praxis series is where you could dive deeper into areas like fundraising, organizing, data comms, facilitation, all the things, and it's all free. So you just need to make an account and then you're smooth sailing from there. And for the big announcement, we are inviting you all to join us and to apply for our new Building for the Future collective learning grant opportunity. That's where we'll be awarding 5 501c3 civic engagement organizations up to $20,000 each to participate in practicing, ideate, test, and dream up new pathways for sustainable funding at a very low risk. And so as part of our project, we want to learn from each other, learn from one another, and collectively build as a strong ecosystem. And so one of our intentions with this grant that we are putting out and inviting you all to apply for is to make it much easier and accessible for folks, right? We've seen the requirements of previous grants and the lengthy process that it could be. And we're very intentional with making this grant as easy and as accessible as possible. So take the learnings that y'all learned today, apply to the grant. The link is in the chat, but we'll make sure to include more information about it. And as you see in the screen, yes, this is what the grant looks like once you click on it. It has all the information that we went over today, which is the deadline, the requirements, what the reporting looks like, and all the things. So you can click that, apply for it, and yes. Thank you all for everything that y'all do and for being here and for being engaged with us, and we appreciate you all so much.
Mo, Desiree, can we go back to the BFTF thing? Just to clarify, Instituto is giving away 5 grants, right, Mo?
5, yes, 5.
at $20,000. So anyone here that wants to apply for that, you can apply for that. So when is the deadline?
September 29th.
Oh, okay. That's in a couple weeks. Do you have to be in AC? Yes, I think, yeah. Check out the requirements. That's what we learned. So if you're 501c3, you're good standing, you have your IRS information, you can apply for this. And we just taught you how to do it. So please, like, if you qualify, you're interested in this, this is a great opportunity for you to learn about fundraising or put together a project around fundraising and how you're going to fund and create more funding resources for your organization. So Victoria, did you want to say anything else about this? I don't know if you want to. Okay, so y'all apply for this. Okay, I think that's it. Please, can we go back to the feedback? Please give me feedback, y'all. I really, if you just put your phone in the QR code on feedback survey, I really do welcome your feedback. It is so important to us. We really do read it. We really do look at what went well, what didn't go so well. We do look at the information. So please take a moment to give us feedback on how we can improve, on what you liked, give me some love. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, Desiree, for sharing that. We hope that you enjoyed it. And I think that's it, right, Mo? I think that's
that's all we got for folks.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. We'll stay in touch and we're going to follow up with an email with my contact info and all of the materials. Thank you so much. Desiree, can you, thank you for music.
Have a good night.
Bye, thank you.